This is how I learned to code, without a computer science degree, entirely on my own. I didn't pay for any boot camps or courses, and I started from scratch. And landed my first job in tech after 6 months. In this video, I want to tell you how I did it and how you can do it too. I was 30 years old when I started, had a full-time job, was a father of 2 kids, and my wife was pregnant with our third. It was right in the middle of the pandemic and I was stuck in my corporate job. I know a lot of you can probably relate. For years, I had this desire to start coding, but I always thought it was too late. It's never too late. And at the ripe age of 30, I decided to start learning how to code. I started with the programming language Python. I watched a 4-hour course on Python on the YouTube channel Bootcamp, and holy shit, I was overwhelmed. I quit a couple of times because as a non-technical person with no CS degree, it all felt super complex. For me, I've always viewed developers as people with superpowers, the power to build. And I was envious of that. I wanted superpowers too. So I didn't give up and kept focusing on the basics. The book Python Crash Course was a major help in understanding and practicing. The book covered everything I needed to know and explained it in a super simple way for dummies like me. So if you feel overwhelmed, this is a great place to start. After the first month, it was time to dive deeper into Python. Full disclaimer, at this time, I was working as a manager for an engineering department, but it was a non-technical job. I was in charge of budgeting, strategy, and overall responsible for the department. No one knew I wanted to move into a technical role or that I was even learning how to code. And I didn't use any of my contacts to land me a job. But one of the benefits of being part of that company is that I had access to paid resources, like O'Reilly. I started to follow courses on O'Reilly. O'Reilly has many premium courses on everything, from web development, machine learning, app development, and a lot more. I wanted to go down the data engineering route, so I focused on Python libraries such as Pandas and NumPy. But to understand web development as well, I also studied the Python web development framework Django. D is silent. Now, even though I was following courses on O'Reilly, I also resorted to YouTube and a lot of free articles to better understand specific concepts. So if you don't want to sign up for a paid subscription service, you don't really need to. You can still learn a lot or almost everything for free on YouTube. Brad Traversy's course on Django was my main source for learning the framework Django. The benefit of O'Reilly was that I had access to books, such as Data Wrangling with Python. At this stage, my advice is really to stick to one language. As a beginner, it's already a lot to take in, let alone dealing with multiple languages, each of them having their own learning curve. Also, a significant benefit on focusing on mastering the fundamentals of any language is that the knowledge can be applied when you're learning a new language, making it easier and faster to learn new languages down the road. After 2 months or so, I started to create my own exercises to become better at programming, and I started to post these exercises on Twitter, along with my notes and other stuff that I learned. This really helped me solidify the fundamentals. And while I was sharing my journey learning Python, I made quite a few friends on Twitter and even built a social following. I also participated in challenges like Kaggle's Machine Learning Challenge. Somehow I was still shy to post as I wasn't a content creator. And all of this was new. And posting on social media was still new to me. But at some point I thought, fuck it. And I did live streams doing these challenges. As I did these kind of challenges, my skills became better and better. And they were really fun to do as well. So about 4 months in, I don't have a computer science degree. And while there is a free Harvard course out there called CS50, which is apparently really good, I took a different route, Raspberry Pis. I started playing with Raspberry Pis and I built a small cluster. A cluster is multiple Raspberry Pis connected to each other. Oh yeah, and if you don't know what a Raspberry Pi is, it's basically a small computer. Through building a cluster, I learned the basics of networking, IP tables, firewalls, and securing hardware. I also got some hands-on practice with container technologies such as Docker and managing infrastructure with Kubernetes. If you don't know what Kubernetes and Docker is, don't worry about it. The point is, I really learned by being hands-on. And by being hands-on with Pis, I really gained a better understanding of how, for instance, servers work. During this time, I also spent some time diving into Web3, learning about blockchain technology, smart contracts, and building decentralized applications. Quick disclaimer, after 6 months, I wasn't a fully fledged senior software engineer. It takes much more knowledge and experience to achieve that. And like I mentioned, a developer never really stops learning. After about 6 months, I got in touch with a company in San Francisco through my boy Prata, a friend I got to know via Twitter. And I landed my first job as a DevRel engineer, aka developer advocate. At this job, I was writing tutorials, doing coding workshops, and gaining even more hands-on experience. While I was there, I even picked up JavaScript and React, which I was able to learn fairly quickly because I spent a lot of time learning the fundamentals while I was studying Python. Right now, I'm at my second job in tech and less busy with coding again. And this is where I'm noticing that programming is a skill you need to maintain. I worked extremely hard on my Python skills, so it feels like that has solidified in my brains. However, newer tech that I just played with or didn't work with as intensely is difficult to maintain skills in, especially if you haven't coded in it for a while. Anyways, this is my journey into programming as a previous accountant, a husband, a father. So trust me when I tell you, I know how hard this is. Learning programming is not easy, but it's 100% doable. You can 100% do it if you really want it. I had to sacrifice a lot of my time which was precious because I was working, I was a dad, a husband, but in the end it paid off. And that leads me to the most essential aspect of becoming a developer that you need to know, and that is passion and motivation. There's this concept of the flow state. TLDR, the science behind it tells us that if the challenge is too big for a skill set, we get anxiety and stress. If the challenge is too small, we get bored. But if the challenge is the right size compared to our skill set, we enter the flow state. From my experience, the start is pretty much overwhelming and you just have to bite through it, especially if you don't have a technical background like me. However, after a couple of months, I was really enjoying learning new things. The path of the developer is that you never stop learning and you really need to enjoy that. If you do, it just becomes that much easier. So if this sounds like you, I highly encourage you to just start your journey. Side note, don't listen to anyone who tells you you can learn programming in 2 weeks. Sure, there are free cases of people learning how to code in 3 months, but for the majority of people without a technical background, it's going to take a bit more time. This is not to say that it will take everyone 6 months. Some might be faster and some might take longer. But again, it's 100% doable and I'm not the only example. I would name tens of people, but I'm not sure if they actually want to be called out. My life has changed ever since I jumped into tech. I've visited over 11 countries, working on the latest tech with super cool people, and I'm absolutely loving the culture of the tech industry. So if you want a career in tech, whether that's as a software engineer or a developer advocate, remember it's 100% doable. You just gotta start.